building a culture, you have to be intentional about it. And I think you have to be, and it means talking about it all the time. It means documenting it. It means kind of being repetitive about these things. And then on top of it, you need to be very, very protective of it. Because if you start going down the wrong path, especially with a company that's as small as we are, but as growing as quickly as we are, you have to be very protective. And then when you're going down that wrong path, you need to right size fast. If there's somebody that doesn't fit that culture, you need to cut ties and move on.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? Increasing the level of engagement with everyone involved in the company is something that a lot of people talk about, but they don't actually do. And engagement's not really the goal. Engagement's a byproduct of having the right culture. And one of the things I've learned is you want people to take more ownership of their work. You want them to feel like they have a seat at the table. So in my network, I talk to a lot of companies and leaders about what does it take for them to grow. And I found Pete Maldonado. Pete is just an amazing leader of Chomps.com. It's one of the meat sticks companies. They were number 62 on the Inc. list. They grew at over 4,000%, over 20 million in revenue. And they've done all this with 14 employees. And how have they done it? Well, they want their employees to have this sense of ownership. They want them to take risk. They want them to truly be a part of the process and innovate and never let micromanagement keep them from growing as a company. Now, we talk about what is it like to have everyone feel like they have a seat at the table? What is it like to actually put everybody in a seat at the table? And that is what this interview is all about. So if you want to grow your company, make sure you tune in to today's interview with Pete Maldonado. Hi, Pete. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm excited to have you here at Grow Think Tank. I've already let our audience know a little bit about you and what your business is, but I'd love for them to hear it from you. So tell us about Chomps and just give us an overview.
Cool. Yeah. So Chomps is it's a healthy meat stick company. So what we're doing is taking everything you can probably think of about the snack sticks or meat sticks that you probably find in a conventional C-store setting or a gas station. And we basically took all of the bad stuff out and put good stuff in. So if you can imagine taking out all of the cheap proteins, mechanically separated chicken and pork and all these other type of cheaper, non-sustainably raised proteins. And we're using grass-fed, grass-finished beef. We're using free-range ABF turkey. We have grass-fed, grass-finished venison as well, which is so we're doing, and we actually eliminated a bunch of the artificial preservatives. So we kind of just cleaned everything up. So anything you think of that was bad, we made good. And the product in the end actually tastes a hell of a lot better than what you would expect in a natural, better for you product.
Well, Chomps has come onto the market pretty fast, so it might help to give our audience some context. Where'd you get the idea, and then how did you begin to create this empire?
Yeah. So idea came from, well, first off, I grew up eating way too many of those conventional brands that I just mentioned. And I loved, Slim Jims, I loved those, right? So I used to actually ride my bike to the grocery store, to 7-Eleven, and I would go buy a bunch, and then I'd have a couple in my pocket, and I'd be eating some on the way home. And I was a little bit of a slob in that way. But yeah, so looking back, I'm not, I always liked, I think, the format of the product. I liked meat snacks. I didn't really like jerky because every time I would eat it, my jaw would kill me. I would get a headache. I liked it. They were softer. They're easy to chew. And then when I got a little older and I actually was a personal trainer in college. And that's kind of how I got through college. And I learned how to start reading nutrition labels. And once I realized what was actually in those things, I had to stop eating them completely, and I always kind of missed them. And then in 2012, I started doing CrossFit and eating the paleo and learning a lot more about reading labels and not necessarily just the macronutrient profile, but now looking more into the ingredients list. And once I started doing all of that, I again, just cleaned up my diet even further. But then I was always like, why doesn't someone just make a healthier version of those meat sticks? I want them. So that's really where the idea came from. And then, to go a little further, like starting a business, I was actually at the CrossFit Games in 2012 in Carson, which is like right outside of LA. And I just remember walking around. There's like thousands of people at these CrossFit Games, and they're just like incredible. That's in such good shape. I mean, there's like six packs everywhere. Everyone walks around with their shirts off, of course, right? So got to show it off. But I just remember thinking to myself, like, man, these people are so diehard. I knew just being in the business that I was in, what it takes to maintain a body like that. And just knowing that all these people were doing it, I saw that, wow, this is an opportunity to sell some products into this community here. And I think they would take off like wildfire. So that's really where the idea came from. And then that's where the initial community, and that was going to be my core focus when I launched it. And that's what we did. So
now you've got a co-packer that takes care of like a lot of the production of the business. For those that don't really understand what co-packing is, why don't you explain to us?
So we outsource. So we don't own a manufacturing facility. We outsource that to a third party. So it's a third party that actually, that's all they do is manufacture for other brands. And so they've got, when you're sourcing one of these, a co-packer specifically for like meat sticks, you have to find a co-packer that's got the capabilities and the manufacturing process and the equipment already in-house typically in order to start even working with them. So in this case, we actually partnered up with, it was a very small co-packer in Missouri in a little farm town. And he had one little smokehouse, and which is like with the little ovens that we actually cooked the product in. And back then, it was in the back of like a little market. And fast forward till today, I mean, it's a massive plant, and he's making products for a bunch of different customers. We're one of their largest now, and I think the largest. And it's just been a great partnership to be able to kind of grow our business, and their business has grown as well.
And I didn't go into the details of this, but a little over 20 million in revenue last year, over 4,000% growth. So you were, what number were you on the Inc. list?
62 overall, and number 3 in food and beverage, that was a good one for us, or a big one for us. The year before, actually, we landed on the Inc. list. We were 124 overall, and number 4 in food and beverage. So moving up in those ranks.
Well, I can totally appreciate that because I talk to a lot of people that are growing fast, but you have a core team that you really have to operate efficiently. And that's something that you value very importantly. What is this operating efficiently to you?
It's everything. I mean, so if you look at like this year, for instance, like our and I'll be pretty transparent with you. Our reach goal is around $40 million in revenue. And so we're looking to just about double year over year right now. And we're doing that right now. We have 14 full-time people on staff. And, just to put it into perspective, I think, in this industry, for most other food and beverage or CPG companies around this size, the rule of thumb, I think, is somewhere around 1 employee per million in revenue. So if you took that rule of thumb, we're operating with about, somewhere around like 30% or something like that of what we should be in terms of staff. So for us to be able to, we have to be operating efficiently and get maximize output for our little team in order to hit the numbers that we need to hit.
And one of the things that you really value, because we talked last week about this, was everyone has a seat at the table.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make assumptions, but what does that mean to you?
So it's huge. So it basically what we need to be able to do is make sure that every single employee on this team is able to work independently, but then also collaborating with the rest of the team. So there needs to be a lot of cross-functional collaboration. And at the same time, every single one of these employees needs to be innovating. They need to be thinking outside the box. They need to be taking calculated risks, and we as leaders, Rashid and I, and some of the other leadership team, we need to be, encouraging that. And so it's it's investing in it, putting your money where your mouth is, and encouraging people to really to take risks and to push things forward. Otherwise, if we're not doing that, there's no way for us to scale with the size of team that we have right now. If we're sitting there having to handhold and micromanage, we're not going to get anywhere, right? So for us, it's a big deal.
When I talk to companies that have these kind of values, usually they have them pretty well documented. Have you taken the time to like document the values of the company?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we write out, we're very intentional about the culture that we're trying to build, and we'll have like full on, culture strategy sessions, which really it's all hands on deck. We've got the whole team, doesn't matter who you are or what, your seniority is, or, if you're a new junior or entry level employee that just started with us, everybody's there, and it's all hands on deck talking about this stuff. And the thing about like for us, and, I think with any business and building a culture, you have to be intentional about it. And I think you have to be, and it means talking about it all the time. It means documenting it. It means kind of being repetitive about these things. And then on top of it, you need to be very, very protective of it, because if you start going down the wrong path, especially with a company that's as small as we are, but as growing as quickly as we are, you have to be very protective. And then when you're going on that wrong path, you need to right size fast. If there's somebody that doesn't fit that culture, you need to cut ties and move on. So, and that's what we've been trying to do the best job that we can. And we've learned some valuable lessons.
Now, hold on there for a second. Pete just talked about the value of being intentional. Now, you may not be surprised, but a lot of companies really run their businesses not based on being intentional, but being reactive. And in fact, many companies I talk to are reactive to the point that it causes stress, anxiety, frustration, all of those things, because they're not taking the time to truly be intentional about their work, creating strategies, creating redundancy, creating something that will really help them move forward. Now, if your business is struggling from this, you want to make sure that you be honest with yourself and reflect on how much time you're spending being reactive and how much time you're spending being intentional. You may not get to 100% intentional because things do happen, but if you're less than 50% intentional, you're probably feeling that pressure right now. Now, back to the interview with Pete. Pete, how many values do you have? Like those core values you talked about?
Yeah. That's a good question, actually. So I could go through some of the words, actually. So our culture, it looks more like, if we were to write it out, it looks more of like, keywords that we like to hang our hats on.
Okay.
One of those keywords, and this is one that I will talk about all the time. It's about being scrappy, which is being resourceful and working with what you've got. And that's literally how we've gotten to this stage that we're at right now with this business. And we've been that way since day one. So Rashid and I, when we were running this thing by ourselves for, 6-7 years ago and up until now, we've never lost that scrappiness, and you can't, I think once you do lose that, and you start thinking, you kind of start thinking a different way, and you're no longer thinking outside the box. I think you lose that, a lot of that strength that we've got as a tight team here.
How do you get others to think scrappy?
That's a really good question. So I don't know if it's necessarily us making people think that way, other than, setting as much of an example as we possibly can, but it's about how do you hire, right? And so we're very intentional also about our hiring process. There's different tools that we leverage in order to make sure that we're searching for certain traits in people. Those things. So we actually, one of the things that we did this past year, we actually hired a leadership coach. Her name's Laura Greenberg. She's in Chicago with Verde Associates, and right in Chicago. And so one of the things the tools that she's showed us is these DISC profiles. And previously we were using something called AccuMax, and they're both basically like personality assessments. And it really allows us to learn a lot about how we're pre-wired. But the biggest thing about it that helps with is teaching us how to communicate with each other. So I'm learning so much about Rashid. And over the years, we butt heads a lot because we have two totally different communication styles. I'm more of like the dominant, this is, by the way, I'm not calling myself that. That's actually in the disc profile. It's the dominant. And then he's the conscientious one. And so like, we just like, so first off, like that type of personality, when you have that dominant, like A type personality, sometimes you rub people the wrong way. Right. I could be very direct, and whenever there's, so there's certain things like that. Like he's now realizing that I'm not just trying to be a jerk. And the things that he does is he analyzes things to a T a lot. Right. So I might be like working on something and he might go and tell me like, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? And he's just pointing out things that he finds as flaws in my idea. And to me, I might get frustrated and upset about it. Like, why has he just got to pick apart my work? And then I'm realizing, when you get into these profiles, you realize it's just the way he is. And he's not doing it to be mean or start a fight. He's literally he's pre-wired to be that way. So for both of us, it's actually helped us to communicate with each other. And, it's almost like marriage therapy, it's like, it's marriage counseling. We're in love now. We understand. And we're working well together. And, no, but that's, it's really how it is. And then it's the same thing with all of our other employees. You have to know what you're dealing with and how these people are pre-wired, in order to be communicating properly.
Is there anything specific you've done to ensure that everyone feels that sense of they have a seat at the table?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. So again, going back to those strategy sessions that we have, it's all hands on deck. So one of the things that we think was really cool, we tried in one of the sessions was having, we call it like a lunch and learn. So everybody was kind of just eating lunch. And during that, we had two people come up and they actually did an Excel, Microsoft Excel training session for everybody. And so we kind of thought about it, like, let's just test it and see how that works. I think everyone might be able to benefit from this. And it turned into like this really cool, again, it was just cross-functional, collaboration. Everyone was chiming in, asking questions. Everyone walked away from it learning something. And these are two junior employees that we have that came and put this little training session on, and they killed it, and I walked away from it learning something, a lot of things actually. So for us, like that was really cool to be able to do that. And so now we're going to be doing those lunch and learns just on an ongoing basis. And it might just be in the normal course of a week, and just kind of, bring lunch in, have everybody, kind of working and listening in while somebody does a presentation. And so with those, what we plan to do, it's more of like almost like a day in the life or something, right? Like, so you can dive in and whatever your role is. And if it's somebody that, maybe it's our Amazon lead, and maybe she's up there just telling everybody what's like for her and the wins that she's recently had, some challenges and opportunities, and going through those and then getting some feedback from the team.
Love that idea, because when you give that example of letting them, share their skills, it really does help them really create a place that their ideas are valued.
Right.
Especially for one of the founders of the company to go, oh, I really like that. And they're writing down, taking notes, like you're totally engaged.
Yeah.
It probably makes them show up to other meetings feeling more appreciation.
Exactly. And, this is actually something that one of our other junior employees brought up, and it was like, what is your, in terms of a leader, what are you looking for? Because by the way, so as leadership coach, one of the other things that they'll do is 360 feedback, right? And so they'll go and ask all the individual employees, what do you feel about your leaders? What do you feel about their leadership style? What can they do better? And it's like, and they provide honest feedback, and this is all anonymous feedback. Like they're not going to go and get thrown under the bus by this, by anybody. And so when we hear this stuff, it's like, we're getting honest, brutally honest sometimes feedback, and we can learn a lot. So some of the things that we've learned and heard is that, leadership is not just like, oh, we did this team building exercise, or we did this, whatever, one event at this, whatever it is. It's not one thing. It's a culmination of like day after day. It's walking in the office and saying like, how was your weekend? And actually listening to the response. Like the littlest things like that just add up over time. and just truly caring about your employees. I mean, you can't hide that. It's not something you could fake. And so for us, it's something, again, that we were very intentional about, and making sure that we, or at least we do our best, right? I mean, we're not perfect. We're humans, and we're running 1,000,000 miles an hour at all times. So for us specifically, it's challenging to always be on point with those things.
Pete just talked about caring. A lot of people think that you care about your employees because you give them a place to work. Well, if you took the time to truly ask them about what's going on in their personal lives, you'd have a much better sense of who they are as people, and they would feel better understood. Really listening to someone feels a lot like love. Really listening to someone feels a lot like they could actually do anything for you. They would run through walls for you. So if you spend all of your conversations at 100% on work, you're probably missing the opportunity to build a little bit more connection. And I find a lot of leaders that are hard driving on themselves don't take the time to really listen to their employees, to talk about their families, talk about, what's really going on with their children, what's going on in this stage of life that they're in, because there's a lot of pressures. There may be some common bonds that you guys can connect over, and that makes them feel heard. And that really does go a long way in being the kind of leader that you really want to be. Now back to the interview with Pete. Well, I really appreciate you talking about the need to have a culture where everyone has a seat at the table, and some of the details that you've gone through that. Where would you point our audience to if they want to get more information about Chomps?
Chomps.com. Yeah, it's very simple. That's our website. We're actually, before I got on this, we're under maintenance mode right now. We're about to launch our new website. So it's super exciting. We've been working on this for months now. It was a long weekend actually getting some more work done. So we're ready to rock and roll and launch that really soon here. So check it out, chomps.com.
Perfect. Well, thanks for being here at Growth Think Tank.
Thanks, Gene. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Wow, what a powerful interview. I really love some of the details we talked about there. Some of the things that you can take away from this are, how do you get your junior employees to provide value back to others? Well, if they have special skills, then you want to make sure they can actually come in and do simple lunch and learns or anything like that where they're sharing. And they will also create more ownership in the meetings that they show up for. So if you really value getting all of the people to feel like they have a seat at the table, then that really is the episode for you to tell your team about and talk about this episode. Listen to it together. If there's anything else I can do for you here at Growth Think Tank, just make sure you let me know. My name is Gene Hammett. As always, lead with courage, and I'll see you next time.